Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirrabbilalamin. Assalatu wassalamu anbiya wa mursalin. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad fatil makhliq wal qatil ma sabaq nasrul haq bihaq wa hadila siratul mustaqim wa ala alihi haqnudaril azim. Alhamdulillah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Peace be upon you wherever you are in this online program workshop. Right, I welcome you, all of you, and thank you for joining us. Right, thank you, Abu Sufyan, for introducing us. Inshallah, we're gonna be. It's more of a workshop actually, and it is not a lecture. I'm not going to give a lecture. Actually, it's more of a workshop, and a workshop is a two-way discussion or two-way of communication, right? I also like to learn as much as I could from all of you, right? And before I begin, why is it that we touch on this important subject, the intention and first step to marriage, right? Because all over the years at South Ilahi, we have met many couples or individuals, man or woman, who actually suffer a lot in their marriage. And I use the word suffer, and I know it's not a good word to describe, but it's the reality of many people experiencing the unpleasantness in many ways, right? Some they experience abuse, mental, spiritual, physical, and some experience infidelity. Some experience bully, also related to all this topic that we touch, but we go to the core of it, the root of it, right? Intention and the first step to marriage. So I'm going to touch on intention, and my beloved wife will touch on the first step. So it is connected, it's correlated. Intention to first step in marriage, right? Okay, we're going to begin now. Can you share screen? Can you all see my screen? uh, I think
Yes.
some of you off, so I do not know whether uh, you see it or not. But if you don't see my screen or hear my voice, please you can comment on the chat or just raise your hand using the tools on Zoom. Yeah, so 30
Yeah, we
minutes.
can see it's
Abu,
very clear.
okay. Alhamdulillah. Abu give us 30 minutes. So I don't know, I'm going to rush or I'm going to be step by step. But my wife said that if I go step by step, it's 3 hours. So yeah, no. Like, so Alhamdulillah. So intention. What is your intention for marriage? Right? And what most of us forget is that intention also open up how we see things in life, right? It's like I'm calling Abu Sufyan. So what is my intention in calling Abu Sufyan? What is it, right? I want Starbucks, I want coffee bean, or Abu, please order for me, or just hint to him, or just to check on him, or just to have communication. But everything is based on the intention. Because if your intention is clear, your journey in reaching out to what you intend is there for you to understand how to go about it. But make no mistake that life is not perfect. And you yourself are not perfect. I'm not perfect. Nobody is perfect except our Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So intention for marriage deals with spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical. Right. So the common question we always get is it for Allah or yourself? That means ourselves. Right. So is this marriage for Allah or is this marriage for ourselves? So is there a difference in it? Is there a difference when we said for Allah and for ourselves? This is the spiritual part in the marriage, the foundation. because you build that foundation and then you're going to build that road, right? And later on, it becomes like how you see things in life. Because without the foundation, then it's going to be difficult for you to understand or to see with clarity, right? The roadmap of your marriage. But then again, as I mentioned just now, nothing is perfect. But why we're doing this is to really engage with our soul, so that we are clear that where does this relationship goes to, or how does this marriage actually achieve what we intend, the objective, right? So what does it mean by, does it mean for Allah, the marriage, right? Can anyone give me an example for instance? There's no right and wrong, just say what does it mean for Allah in marriage. This is a spiritual part, right? And it's also mental because it goes back to that foundation, right? Anyone would like to share anything? As I mentioned, it's not about right and wrong. It's just sharing with what you think it is, right?
One thing to achieve Jannah together.
Sorry, I can't hear.
One thing to achieve Jannah together.
Can someone say back what he said? I saw someone raising his hand, Brother Shahir. Sorry, the sister, what were you saying? Abu, can you hear what she said? Oh, Kismet, sorry.
He
Okay,
said
so
wanting to achieve something together, if I'm not wrong.
yeah, Sister
Okay,
Shafiqah, could you repeat that again?
Shahir, it was Sister Shahir. Was it?
Brother Shahir.
Jannah.
No, I don't think it's
Yeah,
Shahir.
I see her. Sister Shafiqah, could you repeat it again?
Achieve Jannah together.
Okay, she said achieve
Achieve
Jannah
Jannah
together.
together.
Okay, mashallah, beautiful. Beautiful. Achieve Jannah together. That means tranquility, sakina. I learned from Abu Sufyan. When I asked him how does he feel in marriage, he said mawaddah. Mashallah, mawaddah. May Allah give us that mawaddah, sakina, that tranquility. Brother Shari raised his hand. Can we help him? Yeah, Brother Shari.
Okay. Yeah. Hi. Hello. Assalamualaikum.
Okay, salam.
Okay. For me, the intention is for Allah is for us to work together for both couples to work together to achieve the rida of Allah.
Mashallah,
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful. Both are actually accurate, correct, I would say, right? The intention has to be Allah. Because if marriage is for the nerves, and which most of the time that happen, it always cause the nerves to react in such a way that I'm right and you're wrong. I'm better than you. I'm this and I'm that. Yes, Iman, I don't know whether sister or brother, Iman, so sorry.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. It's a
Inshallah,
sister.
inshallah.
Basically, from when we say it's for Allah, it's ensuring that whoever you choose on that journey doesn't steer you away from the path towards Allah. That you're both working together to attain the pleasure, because you don't want to go for someone just because your heart desires that person, but then that person doesn't lead you to Allah.
Mashallah, beautiful. And that is right, because the duty of the husband is to bring the wife to Allah, not to himself, right? And the duty of a wife is told to hold the family together for Allah. And this is why men and women, when they come together, they will understand their perfection through Allah, from their desire for Allah, right? So mashallah, many of you understand and know the importance of the intention in marriage is for Allah, right? So we go to another slide. And that's why it deals with your spiritual, mental, and spiritual. And Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he himself said that every actions of the ibadah and what we do is based on our intention, right? But most of the time when we think about marriage, because we are hugely influenced with what we see on TV or how we grow up, because men and women kind of thing, we always thought like love is sufficient. That is another topic actually. We can go to another topic. Inshallah, love is sufficient. But what is love actually? Like what the sister Iman said just now, is that love to fulfill your desire, your lust, or that love is to make you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Make no mistake, when husband and wife, when they come together, they make love, intimate and all that, is part of the process in recognizing their slavehood to Allah, because the whole existence of man and woman is through Allah. You were created by Allah, soul, and He give us this physical. How He created our father and our mother, Adam and Hawa, right? So we have the earth and we have the heaven. So we have that divinity, and although we live in this world as husband and wife, and this is most of the time that we forgot, because we are influenced with our surrounding, our environment, and how we see things in life, right? So anything that happen in your marriage or anything that leads to your marriage, it has to go back to your intention. What is the intention for in this marriage? And who is it for? Because the ego and the nafs, right, will develop through whatever we experience in marriage since day one, right? We don't need shaitan. The evil of the self itself is much more harmful in marriage because it causes that destruction, right? That it also affect your children. And this is why it goes back to the intention, the core of everything that we do. We salat, we also say, we salli fadar isha, you know. Everything goes back to Allah. Fasting also, we just had Ramadan. We say, nawaitu samaradin, right? All this intention of fasting in Ramadan is for Allah. Sedekah is for Allah. Zakat is for Allah. So marriage has to be for Allah. Even if you have met that spouse to be, your girlfriend or your boyfriend, way before you want to marry that person. Because the changes in us is our self. And whatever that we experience can actually within a second flip us into another character. Because the ego wants to be in dominant. But marriage is for Allah. You see how it goes back. That is the biggest jihad in marriage actually. Right? So it doesn't matter how long you know such a person, even from childhood, from secondary school, from tertiary, whatever. But the reality is you need to know that this is the foundations of where am I going. Like Sister Iman also said just now, right? You should know that this is for Allah. This marriage has to go for Allah. So the Prophet ﷺ also said that marriage is half of Iman. That means that marriage has to do with our Iman. Intention, Iman. So that when you marry someone, you gain taqwa. But a lot of times people think that taqwa is only something relating to solat, ibadah lah. That's why marriage is ibadah. That's why marriage deal with your mental. Why is it deal with your mental? About how you react is the consequences of your nafs, your bad desire, or is it you doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Right? So it's got to do with our iman. It's more than I love you. It's more than I need you. It's more than I want to be with you. Because the only one that can be with us is the Prophet ﷺ and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the danger in this that if people don't realize is that when they married and certain things happen unexpectedly, especially like violence, domestic violence, mental, spiritual or physical abuse, they were not able to distinguish the reality that they have to stand with Allah. Because your identity had been suppressed that you belong to that person. Right? So husband and wife belong to Allah. Doesn't belong to each other, but they were together because they were created to be together on earth lah. Sorry, slip of the tongue. Right? So on earth. But divinity, divinely, their soul belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what most people don't see it. What is it that it got to do with your emotional? What is it got to do with your mental? What is it got to do with your physical? Because it is more than having that relationship to please each other. It is to witness Allah in every seconds in your life. That's the reality of marriage. If you look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ, to compare where we are today so materialistically, right? How many of us would think that it is possible for someone like Prophet ﷺ, 25 years old, married Sayyidatina Khadijah, 40 years old, and they have children? Whereas when Prophet ﷺ married Sayyidatina Aisha was way younger than him, and yet they did not have children. So how does this make sense then? So when things go wrong in our marriage, not say goes wrong lah, maybe unexpected situation, right? This can be another workshop, managing your marriage. Because it's too long, as I said, wow, 3 hours. Then you get bored, you get angry with me. Right? So managing is another reality, but we are focusing on the intention. What is the intention then? What is the iman then? How do you deal with your spouse ego, with adab, man and woman? Usually people say, oh, woman has to obey husband because the Prophet ﷺ said this. It's true. But look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ. So when you are not healed, don't get married. When you are not ready to confront your ego, I mean, in my own opinion, I'm not saying about the scholar opinion. Scholar, of course, they give you a different opinion. But for my experience, 8 years at South Ilahi, if you are not ready to deal with your ego, then it's difficult for you to get married, whether man or woman. When it comes to nafs, there's no gender bias. But of course, man has a bit more because of society taboo, right? Everybody said, oh, the husband is the leader, the husband is, but the role of the father is more than, or the husband is more than just give nafkah. It is also to absorb the ego, buffer. Right? Sorry, I have to ask my assistant, who is my next speaker, right, to help me with the slide. So intention leads to attention, leads to destination and the goal. So we said just now, the intention is Allah. Attention is what then? Can someone teach me what is attention, or share with me what is attention in this? Anyone would like to share? Yoo-hoo.
Seeking attention from Allah. Is it seeking attention from Allah?
Okay, attention for Allah. What it means then, attention from Allah? Or attention on Allah. What does it mean? Anyone like to share? No right and wrong, please. This is we going deeper. Yes, Iman, Sister Iman again. MashaAllah. Thanks.
Maybe does it mean focusing on, for example, how you act on your intention and how you behave in accordance to that intention, and paying attention to how you manifest the things that you need to do to get to that point.
MashaAllah, beautifully said, correct. Focusing, working on the intention and dealing with the intention. That is attention. Anyone else like to share? Please. There's no right and wrong. We are here to learn. Abu?
Is it the attention of the nafs?
Attention on the nafs. So what you mean by attention on the nafs? Interesting.
You just focus that you don't, you are more conscious on how you deal with the nafs, because like you said, like you when you're not ready to confront the ego, then do not get married, right? So basically, take care of the ego. So the attention is to take care of that.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful, mashallah. So 3 people have said, and all of them said nicely. I mean, beautifully, I would say, and really, because it is actually broadened from your intention, right? So that's why different people have different needs when it comes to their marriage. So you cannot compare yourself with someone else. You cannot say, oh, I want to be like this. Why my marriage is like that? Why my marriage is not like this? Why can't I have children? Why can't I have a holiday every 3 months? Right? So you get back to attention. A few of them were saying, nurturing, learning from your intention, what you're looking at. And one of you said about dealing with your ego, with your nafs, right? So attention, focus on Allah beyond your intention. Because when you salat, right, you already say intention Allah Akbar. But when you salat, when you say takbiratul ihram, you already Allah Akbar, then you already focus on Allah, right? With the Fatiha, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. So in marriage, the focus Allah means like what this sister said beautifully, right? Nurturing your intention, dealing with your intention, and focusing on what harms you in your marriage. And that is what it means by attention on Allah. Because most of the time we focus on the problem. We do not focus on the core of the problem. Right? My husband like to sleep snoring. So what is the problem of the snoring? 30 years later, you still married, alhamdulillah, then you say, without his snoring, I cannot sleep. Because I used to it. You see how it changes. But here we're talking about dealing appropriately. How do you understand that you're dealing this for the sake of Allah? Because your journey is towards Allah in that marriage. Right? So in this situation, you have to be focusing on Allah and at the same time having good opinion of Allah, because tests will come. A lot of times people, when they say I love you, but when the test come, I hate you. A lot of people said I want to be with you throughout my life. When the test come, they said, who are you anyway? Why are you in my life? But then again, it boils down to whatever the individuals go through from the past. So not everything has to be generalized, right? So the attention here is like an anchor. The intention is to start. The anchor is to say that, okay, this is what we want and what we need. But then again, throughout of the whole duration of it, the attention is still the same, but the way how we deal it is different. Right. So we have to keep on focusing. That's why in marriage, if you have problem, istihara. How many of us is istihara? What to do next? What can we do next? What are the ways that we can deal? Because you cannot change your spouse just by verbal. You can change your spouse by the state of your soul, the state of your heart. But if it's not meant to be, then you have to work it out with Allah through Allah. Just like before you got married. You istihara, right? Oh Allah, whether this person is good for me or suitable for me. And then you leave it to Allah. You will feel it whether this is for you or not, because you make the decision. There's no right and wrong. There's no perfection in it. That's why marriage has to be in the reliance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the attention, the destination, and then the goal. But all this come in one moment, in 1 second, in one glimpse. Because everything begins from the intention. Foop, it happens. And it changes every now and then as we grow older, day by day. That's why every day you have a certain different types of problem. The only people in their marriage do not have problem is where? Where? In Disneyland lah. Disneyland they got no problem. After they got married, Cinderella got married, they say happily ever after. But the reality of our life, even if you look at our beloved Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, every moment he has some issues to face with. And he's the most perfect creation. He's the most closest to Allah. And yet he's being tested in such a manner. Because marriage has to make you closer to Allah. Right? As I mentioned just now, taqwa. Right? So destination and goal, now we're going to touch on it. Right? Abu, how many minutes I left?
5 minutes.
10 minutes.
10
Oh
minutes.
my God. Yeah. So the destination is where we see Allah, self, family. So how do we see it connected together? The ulama has said, the ulama warista anbiya, right? The scholars are the inheritors of the Prophet. They say that everything that you do should be ibadah. Work is ibadah. To serve your parents is ibadah. To serve your neighbor is ibadah. To serve your community is ibadah. To serve your spouse is ibadah. To serve your children is ibadah. So everything is ibadah. That's why it begins with intention. So we have to realize that the whole journey in our marriage has got to do with Allah. Rizki. Why are we lacking of rizki? Is it because we are lazy? What happens if our spouse get retrenched? How do we respond to it? That's where it goes back to intention. What if we do not have children in our marriage? My wife had miscarriage twice. We went through that experience, and alhamdulillah, we with we contented with Allah's mercy, and I felt that is His mercy. And yesterday, someone was sharing with me, a sister and a husband were sharing with me how they lost their child, right? And they were struggling emotionally, mentally, physically about this. And then I talked to them like maybe an hour or two. And then in the end, then they asked me like, how you go through that? Then I said, alhamdulillah, I realized that everything is from Allah. Right? So you have to acknowledge that what you have in your marriage is also from Allah. So that it doesn't become a validation. So it doesn't becomes an arrogant. Like, oh, I have children. Oh, I have spouse. Oh, I'm this, I'm somebody. No, you're not. You're still a slave of Allah, whether you're married or not, whether you have children or not. Because most of the time, marriage collapse is because we identify ourselves only as a physical being, not understanding the role of our soul in that journey to Allah through marriage. It goes back to what I said in the beginning, right? The intention of marriage, how Allah created us to man and woman to be together. What's the purpose? Because we watch so much Hollywood that sometimes we feel like if I marry this person, that means the world belongs to me. No, a lot of Malay song got all of this, I don't need to sing lah, my voice sucks, so don't ask me to sing. But a lot of Malay song got this, right? Then you sing and then you remind of so and so. That is how profound that we think that this is love. But we are awakened by Allah when Allah gives us the reality of what is love. It's the opposite. Because love doesn't mean only Jamal. Right? Jamal means sweet, lovely. Because love can also be Jalal, Jadid. That means very hard. And that heart actually awaken us to realize the reality of love is these two. Because only in these two that we recognize Allah in our family, in our children, in our career, and in whatever that we do with our family, because whatever we do is ibadah. To spend with our children is ibadah. To spend our children with our parents is ibadah. Right? So how do we see it connected together? That's the key. I don't have time, so inshallah we go again through the next time, right?
You have time.
You sure not? Is
Yes,
it my wife message you and say give Khalid more time?
yes, you have about 10 more
Yeah, but
minutes. Yeah.
if I want to expound this, is a bit more, So marriage is an inward journey that deals not with our soul. There's a mistake here. I minus point with my wife. She typed this, so I said, it's my fault lah. I didn't like. I asked her to write, then wrong. Then I minus point for her. Cannot lah. Huh? Minus point for me. So marriage is an inward journey that deals with soul, not just physical. This is very, very important, brothers and sisters. Whether you are married or whether you are not, or you already married. Because this goes back to the fitrah of what and how Allah created us to be together. And most of the time, marriage ended in bitterness or grief or depression. And many of it are anxiety and depression is because we only see ourselves as a physical being that is to satisfy each other lust. And when you think that marriage is only for that lust, L-U-S-T, it never lasts. Because you don't see that function of that marriage. Just now someone said, right, marriage lead us to Jannah. MashaAllah, beautiful. But what is Jannah then? You're supposed to experience that Jannah on this earth. But because our ego collide, our ego fight, worse than WWE, so we cannot understand the beauty of marriage through the soul. We can only understand the romance of marriage, being together, courtship, make love letter, say mushy things. I'm not saying it's wrong, but you need to understand that it goes beyond that. So there's a time when you experience your divinity, your soul. And there are times when Allah wants you to experience your experience being together on earth, to be part of the humanity. Because we are from humanity. That's why when men and women come together, they have children for Allah. And that children becomes part of humanity, that grow, that worship Allah, that serve the purpose for Allah. So if you don't understand that, then you see a lot of people when they have problem in marriage is because they could not reconcile with each other ego. Right? And when you cannot reconcile with each other ego, the problem will become more complicated because everything is I and there is no you. There is no Allah. It's all I. That's why when man and woman come together, it's not only just for the sake of just having children. It is to annihilate each other, to realize that the whole existence belongs to Allah. There is only Allah. It is for Allah. Because one day you're going to die. And one day when you die, you leave your family, then your husband or your wife marry again if you die younger lah. I mean, this is reality, right? So Imam Ghazali said very clearly, love whoever you love, but remember that you'll be separate from them when you die or they die. Right? And this is something that we need to reflect deeply upon our soul. So the intention, attention, destination, the goal. So all this throughout this is a living. The goal is what? The goal is the reality. Because before you start your journey in marriage, your goal has become your first start. That means because you come from Allah. But from Allah to Allah actually. But because we are so engrossed in love story and everything, then we thought like it is us who exist on our own. It is us who can coexist with someone, and that person is us, and we are that person, without reflection on the soul. Right? And this is why it's difficult for people when they have issues in marriage. They cannot stand before Allah because the reality is we thought that we are together for each other. Like they say lah, what do you call it? There's a beautiful word for it that everybody like to use. What is it, Abu? I also forgot. It slipped out of my mind. I forgot. What is it? But it's always commonly used. Soulmate.
Soulmate.
Yes, Abu has the same frame as mine. Same thinking. Right? Soulmate. But what is actually soulmate? That's the thing. People also don't really actually understand that. Right? Actually, my wife forgot to add. Actually, after now is a now is a right. Okay, Allah, self, and family. How do we see connected? Right. Actually, I wrote, but I think she forgot to include career, wealth, Hollywood expectation, and holidays. Yeah. So what do you expect from that marriage is very important. And it is very important because it defines your marriage, it defines your relationship. Even if you say that this marriage is for Allah, it's not enough. You have to really understand your soul and your future spouse soul. That means the reality of seeing and being together is for Allah. So I just end here. My wife will take over, inshallah, and we're gonna have a discussion later after she present her part. And I want to hear from all of you this discussion and understanding of this journey. It begins with intention, inshallah. So hope to see all of you again. You can also message Abu, inshallah. Right? Say, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Please forgive me for any inconvenience. I'm rushing because of time limit, but I hope you have benefit from it, inshallah. Please forgive me for any mistake. See you later, inshallah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Um, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, Khalid already explained the most important part, which is the spiritual aspect of marriage and how it is you're supposed to intend it for the sake of Allah. So he has gone deep into that. Okay, for my side, I'll be talking about the first step to marriage, and basically it's more of the emotional aspect and the practical aspect of it. Okay, so the first step that we take when we want to go into marriage is always, Khalid mentioned a bit of it, is istikhara. So istikhara is very important, because that is also what is sunnah and what the Prophet ﷺ tell us to do. Not only for marriage, but most people actually do it for marriage. So the important thing to know is that a lot of people have this misconception that istihara is, when you do istihara, that means your marriage will be a success. It's a guaranteed success. But this is not the case, because in istihara, you're saying that you do not know the unseen, and Allah is the only one who knows the unseen. So here you see the istikhara prayer in Arabic and the transliteration. So what it means is that, oh Allah, you know what, you have the vast knowledge, you are all knowledgeable, and we do not know what you know. We do not know the unseen. Therefore, you're relying on Allah's knowledge, not your own knowledge. Because in reality, when you go into marriage, you cannot know a person 100%. So in a way, a marriage is always a risk, because you can never know a person 100% unless you live with them and all that. So what you're asking from Allah is that Allah knows the unseen. So Allah knows what is good for you and what is not good for you. Therefore, it is important to make this dua and to understand the meaning of the dua, because the dua is a very powerful dua. Not only is it that you cannot see the unseen, you do not know what will happen in your life and you do not know what is good for you. Maybe you think something is good for you, but then it's actually not. Maybe you think something is not good for you, but it actually is. So this is the importance of istikhara. It doesn't guarantee that your marriage will work or you'll have an easy life, but what it's saying is that, oh Allah, you guide me towards something that is good for me. So in any case, even if your marriage doesn't work, it is good for you, because you get something out of it. You learn something. Allah elevate you, things like that. And lastly, if you see the dua, it is to ask Allah to make you content with what happens, which means whatever Allah has written for you, you're content. You are not, you do not grieve. You actually feel at ease at what Allah has given you. So this is very important. So I would say that is the first step. Now, next is to be mentally prepared. What does it mean? Marriage is a serious matter. So it's something that you must think about carefully and be prepared for. Marriage may seem like it's all romantic, because when people talk about marriage, they think about, having companionship, but then they don't think that it's something else, because marriage is not companionship alone. It's also about an added responsibility. So now, if you go into marriage, you have the responsibility as a wife or as husband, and you will be a mother or you'll be a father. So these are all responsibilities. So although especially in today's context, we see marriage as something that is celebrated and something romantic. The reality is that in Islam, it is a responsibility, and it often requires sacrifice. Because maybe when you're single, you have to think about what you want, or maybe what your parents want, but now you have an extra person to think of. And if you have children, you have your children to think about. If you have in-laws, then you have to think about your in-laws. So all this will come into the picture, and these are responsibilities. If you go into marriage with the wrong expectation and the wrong mindset, then you will end up regretting it quite quickly. Okay. In TV shows, they always mention that the spark in a marriage always has to be there. In a relationship, most of it is about relationship. But they always say like the spark needs to be there. And this is where there's this misconception that in marriage, what you feel at the beginning of the relationship, all the spark and the romantic things, must stay throughout the marriage. And if it's no longer there, that means it's no longer romantic, then something is wrong. But this is where it's a misconception, because marriage evolves. Like if before marriage, your partner always sends you to work, but after marriage, maybe he didn't, because maybe he needs to spend more time at work. Or before marriage, he gives you flowers every month, but then after marriage, you don't see the flowers anymore. You must remember that this does not mean the marriage is falling apart or it's no longer what it's supposed to be. You must remember that every marriage evolves and it goes through phases. So the romantic phase is at the beginning, and then you go into the honeymoon period, and then when you have children, when you have babies, it's different, and when you have toddlers, it's different. When you have adult children, it's different. And when it's like 40, 50 years, it's different. So every phase is different. You cannot expect your marriage to be like what it was before. And we see this a lot when some couples, they come to us and they say, I don't feel anything anymore for my husband or for my wife. It wasn't like it used to be. But it wasn't meant to be that way. Marriage is not meant to stay stagnant in that phase where you have sparks and all. So you must think about what marriage means to you, and to understand that there are phases to it. Okay. I'm not saying that you shouldn't love each other. I mean, it's important during the marriage to continue showing love, but I'm saying that the expression of that love may be different, because as you grow together, you go through certain experiences together, that itself is a way for the love to develop. So in actual fact, if you go through a marriage for a long time, the love is more real than at the beginning, because at the beginning maybe you're looking at all the smaller stuff, like the spark and the romantic things. But then when it goes on, then you know that that marriage has depth, in the sense that you go through a lot of things together and you are journeying together. Okay. Do not end up comparing your relationship with others. So we live in an age where there's Instagram and you see the lives of people around you. But we know that actually Instagram doesn't reflect the reality of people's life. People can look happy with their husband or wife or children, but then in real life they may not be happy. So it's important when you go into marriage that you do not compare your relationship with another person. It's not just because other people's lives uh, are bad or good, but it's because every relationship is different. You cannot compare. It's like comparing apples and oranges. It's just different. Each relationship has something unique, and you go into a relationship with different expectations and different struggles. So it's important for you not to compare with others. And this is also another mistake that a lot of people make, because they look at for example, like married people, they look at their friends who, maybe for women, right, they look at their friends who stay at home, are stay at home mom. Then they say, oh, I wish I'm a stay at home mom. And then those who work, then they say, oh, those who stay at home, then they will look at the ones working, and then they say, oh, I wish I can work, So comparing is not healthy to a relationship. What you should be doing is actually talking to your partner if there's an issue that comes up, and not to compare with others, because there are struggles that others face which you are not aware about. Okay, next, dealing with your emotional baggage. Now, this is very important. What does it mean by emotional baggage? Okay, I have seen people who have not dealt with their emotional baggage and they go into marriage, and sometimes they feel trapped. And some got divorced eventually. And what do I mean? For instance, I just give an example. There's someone who has been in a relationship for 8 years. Then suddenly it didn't work out with the guy, and this girl meet a new person and she decided to get married. Okay, and then when she got married, she still have feelings for the guy, but then she didn't deal with it. And she just got married straight away. In the West, maybe they call it rebound, right? It's like a rebound. And they got married. But this is where, before you get into marriage, if you have any such emotional baggage, you have to learn to understand yourself first. Have you let go of this person? If you haven't, then it's something that you need to work on. Because I'm not saying that if you have a long relationship before, you cannot get married again. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that if you do have such relationship, then you must understand that you have to let go and move on. And some people, they are able to do that, because I also have some friends who had been in a long relationship, then they got married and now they're happily married. So there are such cases. But what's the difference between this and the other example I gave? Because for the example that I gave, she did not move on. She still has attachment to the guy. And this is very important, that you need to understand yourself. So this is an important factor that you need to factor in. I'm just giving an example, but there's many other different types of emotional baggage. And it's always important to work on yourself first and be truthful about how you feel. And this is where a lot of people trip, because they do not know how they feel, or they know how they feel, but they do not want to face it. So they know, okay, I still feel like I like that guy, but then I do not want to face it. So you have to face the truth. You cannot be in denial when you go into a new relationship and you want to get married. Okay, other things that is important when you want to go into a relationship is to have communication with your partner. And if you have something like an illness, for example, it's important to discuss this with your future partner. And I'm not talking about just physical illness, but also mental illness too. If you're dealing with depression, anxiety, it's important to have a partner who understands what you need. Because when you go into marriage, you are going to a marriage together and you need to deal with your in-laws. And you need a partner who understands and support you. And that is very important. For instance, if you have family gatherings and for some reason, because you have physical illness or you have mental illness, you're unable to attend gatherings, then that's where your partner needs to be able to be there to support you and to understand you. And this is not always the case. Some people, although they are suffering some physical illness or mental illness, they are not forthcoming with their partner, and they do not tell their partner, okay, this is what I'm going through, so I need you to understand. So these are conversations that you need to have before you go into a marriage, because you need the support of your partner. Without their support, it's going to be difficult for you to go through this alone. Okay, other things that you need to consider before you take that first step is to deal with problems that has surfaced before marriage. For example, different cultures. I've seen people who marry people from other cultures. Maybe Malay marry a Chinese, or Indian marry a Malay, or if you're from overseas, any other cultures. The difficult part here is that it's not that you cannot marry someone from another culture. You can, and many people have made it work. But what are the things that you need to think about? Some of the things that you need to work together, perhaps, is to understand what that culture expects in a marriage. That means each culture may have different expectations of what a marriage should be, a generic expectation. So you need to understand that, and you need to work it together with your future partner so that it doesn't become a culture shock. Some other common problems that we see with people who wants to get married is perhaps they have a problem where their future parent-in-law do not like them. So this is an issue that can go either way. You know, some scholars, when some people ask, okay, can I get married if my parents do not like the guy or do not like the girl? And the scholars have said that if there's no valid reason, yes, you can go ahead and get married. But that's just the fake aspect, right? You can get married. But what about the emotional aspect? That is something that you need to think about. Because if you go into marriage where your future partner's parents do not accept you, then that means a lot of things. That will mean that perhaps they may not even recognize you for many years. For some, maybe eventually their parents accept them. But for others, this can go on for many years without a resolution. So both parties have to be prepared to face this. And the way I see it, mostly from what we see, is that those who went ahead but managed to make the marriage work are those who stick together when facing this difficulty. So they do not just leave their partner to face their parents alone. So they stick together with their partner and they went through it together. And this is very important because this is an important aspect, in fact, in anything in marriage, that you have to be together in facing difficulties and not to turn on each other or to leave your partner to handle any struggle alone. That is where a lot of things break down. Okay, the next one that I want to talk about is expectations in marriage. Okay, one of the first things you must understand, besides intention and some of the problems that you probably need to think about, is expectations. So what is your expectation when you go into marriage? And what is the one thing that when you look at a future partner, what is the one thing that will be a deal breaker for you? So to answer this question, you must ask yourself, what is so important to you in your life that your prospective partner need to accept? For instance, for me personally, it is very important for me that my spouse understands that I like spirituality or tasawwuf, and that's a very important thing for me. So that's a deal breaker for me. If someone does not like tasawwuf at that time, then it wouldn't work out for me because it's so important to me. So it's important here to take note that I'm not talking about the smaller things. I'm talking about the one single thing that is most important to you, not the smaller stuff that you can compromise. So right now, we take a break for 1 minute. I just want you to think about what is it that is most important to you that your future spouse need to understand and need to accept, or what is the one thing that you will never accept in another guy or another girl that will be a deal breaker for you. So I think we take 1 minute. Um, you don't need to share because I think it's pretty personal. So just think to yourself, like, what is the deal breaker for you? What is the one thing that the guy or the girl must have, or what is the one thing that the guy or the girl mustn't have in a marriage? So I want you to think for 1 minute. Okay, that's 1 minute for you. Um, like Nas Daily. But okay. So why do I ask you to think about the deal breaker? Because this is something that is very, very important to you that you must communicate to your future partner, or when you look for a future partner is something that you need to look out for. Because a lot of people, not a lot lah, but some people, when they go into a relationship, they did not think about it. It's not something that they think about. And when they are already into the marriage, then they found out, oh, okay, it cannot work because they keep fighting about the same thing. And this same thing is something that is very important to that party. So there's not going to be any compromise there. And by the time you're married, then it becomes more complex. So you need to know yourself, like, what is your deal breaker? And when you know that, then you know, okay, what do I look for in this guy? What is the topmost important thing? And that's your guideline when you look for a guy or you look for a girl. Okay. I'll go next. Okay. Although I said just now that there's a deal breaker, right? But in marriage, everything else is almost always a compromise. And this is something you must be willing uh, to undertake. Because in marriage, a lot of things you have to compromise. For instance, between me and Khalid, I am the kind who likes to have everything planned out. He is the kind who likes to do anything on the go. So after along the years, we learn to meet in the middle, and he tries to tell me what he plans sometimes, and I try to be more easygoing about what is unplanned. So these are things that you need to learn to compromise instead of fighting. A lot of people, they just get into fights, but they don't learn that, okay, maybe we can meet in the middle. So you must understand that each one of us, there is something that we can compromise, and there are some things that we absolutely cannot compromise. Like for example, the deal breaker is something that you absolutely cannot compromise, and you must know what it is. But all the rest of the things, almost always you will have to compromise. And you usually notice some of the habits and beliefs of maybe your future partner that you may not like. When this is the case, you may need to adjust your expectations or to discuss if this can be compromised. For instance, I read on Twitter Aku, one of the websites, somebody posted that there was this woman who was complaining about her husband playing video games. Then some other women commented back, "Oh, actually, you should just let him play video games. You should be understanding." So this is where you see that even different women, they have different expectations. For some women, they don't mind if their husband play games, they don't mind. But for some women, they do mind. And for some women, it's really important that it's a deal breaker. So you have to know yourself. It's not about right or wrong. Video games is not right or wrong. It can be good, it can be bad. But the idea here is whether you find a person that can accept something that your bad habits, and to find that compromise. If let's say you don't agree, but then you're willing to compromise, then it's workable. So these are things you need to think about. Okay, let's go to the next. Okay, this is an important thing. I have just a few slides more. In Singapore especially, it's important to talk about the basics of what you plan to do after your marriage in terms of accommodation, because this is another problem that we often see in families. Accommodation is one of the source of the problem. So especially in Singapore, you need to plan ahead. Do you plan to buy a house? And if yes, how long will it take? And meanwhile, if you're waiting for, let's say, a BTO, a flat, okay, where are you going to stay? Are you going to stay at your mother's house or your in-laws house? And if this is the problem, especially in Singapore, the house is small, so maybe your siblings are there, and there may be things like, okay, your siblings are not happy that your wife is staying with you, or for the girls, your sibling might not be happy that the guy, your husband, is staying with you. So these are things that you must think about, and you must discuss and come up with a solution, because this is especially stressful because this is your house. So it's where you stay most of the time, especially in this pandemic, you stay there to work as well. So these are things that need to be talked about before you go into marriage, not in detail, not like, okay, how what like, okay, what type of house and all that one can be discussed later. But the question is, right after marriage, where are you going to stay? And this is important, and people usually don't think about this. If they take it easy lah, like they think like everything will go fine, but then there's issues like, okay, even if you stay at your parents' house, right, maybe your parents expect you to pay a certain amount. So these are things that need to be discussed as a family as well. Okay, lastly, I already take too much time. So lastly, I just want to add, this one has not so much to do with the topic, but something that I feel is very important is for people to look at the red flags of a possible abuser. I say this because I see a lot of single people come to me and they ask me, "Oh, do you think this guy is someone I should marry?" And then she described about how he ever verbally abused her, or expect her, okay, you cannot go out with your friends. So these are red flags, and I want to talk about these red flags because it's very, very important that you do not marry someone who is a potential abuser. And even our scholars last time, when someone asked him, Imam, do you think that I should marry someone who has physically hit me before, and or emotionally abused me before? And he said straight away, he said, you cannot be with this guy unless he go for therapy. And he was very clear on it. There's no way you should marry, because when you go into marriage and involves children as well, it becomes very complex and it's hard for you to get out. So what are these red flags? Red flags are things like he has hit you before, or he has a pattern of verbally abusing you. Not just saying like, oh, you're stupid when he's angry, but he is putting you down consistently. And you have seen this many times. And then he cuts you off from your family, from your friends. These are red flags. And I feel, just as a last note, I feel that this is something that is very important for people to take note of before they go into marriage. For this first step, I didn't include financial. I think a lot of premarital courses mention about that as well, but I'm not going to go into it. So this is the last part for me. So it's over to Abu.
Alhamdulillah, thank you, Sister Ainun and Sidi Khalid, for your presentation and your sharing. We have a few questions. A few of you have sent your questions, some via Zoom, some WhatsApp. I think preferably send to 87767706. I'm not sure how Sidi Khalid and Sister Ainun, do you want us to address the questions that just came in first, or you want to open to the floor for discussion first?
I think we take one question, then we can open. No problem.
Okay.
No problem.
No problem. Fantastic. All right. The first question. I am in a relationship with a man who is a recovering addict and is also diagnosed with schizophrenia. Currently, he is in rehab and is learning about his mental illness. Due to the stigma of mental illness, even some of his family members and friends do not help him with getting medical treatment, so they abandon him. I'm the first girlfriend who understands both his condition and is actively helping him with his recovery from his addiction and mental illness. Both of us are helping each other getting closer to Allah. Are both our intention to get married correct?
Okay. Okay, subhanallah, that is, of course, schizophrenia is something that is a very complex problem, and addiction too is another complex problem. So you are dealing with two complex problems, and there's no easy solution to this. People who are recovering from addiction, I'll just talk about addiction first. People who are recovering from addiction, they do need a lot of support. And you're saying that the family is not supportive, and that leaves only you as the girlfriend, and that you must understand that this will be a heavy thing. There's no right or wrong, because in things like this is a complex issue. But you need to think about how, or whether so far, how have you handled this with him? Because schizophrenia also has its sets of challenges, and you need to take medication consistently. So how have you been with him so far? Have you been able to actually help him together? And how are you handling it emotionally? Are you able to take it so far, or are you breaking down as well? So these are things you need to think about, because may Allah help him, inshallah. But these are things that are very heavy, and if you cannot do it, then you must also be honest with yourself, because sometimes in cases of schizophrenia, they may act in ways that is difficult for you to control. So if you think honestly that you are able to take it, then make sure you also get in touch with his therapist and his counselor, so that you yourself understand what is involved. So you need to be involved in his therapy before you get into marriage, because you need to talk about to the therapist. Okay, what am I getting myself into? Can I do this? So there's not only him, but you must also think about yourself, and you must also be involved in his therapy, so that you understand what you need to do. I think that's about it. I mean, I'm giving general advice.
All right, thank you, Sister Ainun. Sidi Khalid, do we want to open to the floor for discussion? Okay, before we open, since you're having an open discussion, it's encouraged for you to turn on your screen if you can. Inshallah, those of you who have any questions, you can just unmute yourself, and we'll try to go one at a time. Yeah. Anyone has anything to share? You can just unmute yourself. There's no right or wrong answer. It's not an exam or anyone has anything to share or say?
Or perhaps, Abu, we could ask them to use the raising hands function while you go on to other questions.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Those who have any, thanks, Kismet. Those who have any questions or you want to say something, just raise your hand. Then we'll go over to you. Yeah. So let's go to the next question in that case. Next question is on dealing with emotional baggage. The question goes, how do we know that we have really moved on before we start a new one?
I think first and foremost that is very important is you are openly looking into yourself and ask yourself, where am I right now? Right. I mean, you're at home. Yeah, you're home, but the state that you are in, where are you right now? In the presence of what? Right. So this is a very difficult question because there is no direct answer to it. Because different individuals has a different way of progress or moving forward in terms of removing the past baggage. But I have to be very upfront. Emotional baggage or past will always be there, and you cannot erase it. It is how you manage it that is very important. So one of the ways that you can really understand is to look into your brokenness and accept that you had been hurt before. And as long as you know that you are broken and you are hurt, and you are really looking into how to understand your journey through this brokenness, and how is it that you are hurt, and why are you hurt? Because sometimes people, when they say they are hurt, they always refer to the person, which is true. The other person hurt you, the other person breaks your heart, the other person do a lot of things that is not good into you when it's in relationship, or whether it's marriage or before marriage or in relationship. But I think the key factor is not the person, it's you. Because most of the time we look at the other person and just saying that I'm hurt because of you, right? But to go forward is saying that I'm really hurt. And it's normal. No, I always receive this question, why am I feeling sad? Then I ask the person, and all this person who asked me, why is it that you cannot feel sad? Why? Why is it wrong to feel sad? Why is it cannot, you cannot cry, you cannot weep, right? Some footballer, when if you love football, right? Some footballer, when you watch the game, I love football. So I always observe since I was young, like their temperament during the game, after the game, and when they lost and when they won, right? It's in emotion. But 5 years later, that game doesn't matter anymore. Does it matter or not? Actually, it doesn't matter anymore because it's a new phase of life. Right? Even if you win the World Cup, so many players win the World Cup. What happened to them? Then nothing also. What? That moment doesn't remain. Right? I was talking to my nephew, my youngest nephew, Danisha. That is your no, I see Danish. So he was talking to me like about this Manchester City. They lost the Champions League. So one of the star player cried. Then he asked me, uncle, he cried because they lost, right? But next year also got Champions League. What? Next another year, if they alive, I said. But that is to be human. That means that you react accordingly to what you're supposed to be, right? Even though people say only football, what life goes on. But that's the thing. We need to be ourselves. We need to react truthfully to ourselves. Because a lot of people can smile, but actually they are deeply wounded. We already saw that, right? In social media, people share this person, like our mother, they smile, but actually in their heart, they are worried, they feel sad. But I think only you know yourself whether you had moved on. But the key here is move on to, right? That's the question. Move on to, and you need to learn how to manage your emotion, right? Do you think people who sin? I give you all the wali Allah story. Some of them who sin. Now after that they became a good wali Allah, right? They became the friends of Allah. But at certain time when the memory of their sins came, they cry, they weep. First, they weep because of regret. Later on in their life, they weep because they witness the mercy of Allah through their sin. So likewise for us, we also have certain moments that we do not want to think, but it becomes part of our memory or growth or journey, right? So that's why some people they will like la 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 or this we what whenever they encounter certain things. Or you zikir and all that. But you know yourself better than both of us because we cannot say definitely you have move on. Oh, this type of person they had a move on. This type of person they haven't moved on. No, it's difficult to say unless we know you personally. And also healing to be better is a journey. It's a journey for your soul, it's a journey for your heart. There's no direct source of healing. As I mentioned that all of us are broken also. Me and my wife, we also broken. We also had our failure. We also had our setback. And it's not that we are better than you or any one of you or we are stronger than any one of you. No. It's a mercy. Right? To the extent of what you go through, then we understand the capacity of or the deeper end of it. But to say how to move on, this is what we say. Accept your brokenness, accept the fact that you are hurt, you're willing to learn how to engage yourself and move forward in a holistic approach, zikir, salawat, and also manage your emotion. Because most of the time, people think that when they zikir and they salawat, everything is gone. It's not gone. That's why the awliya say ma'rifah. That means ma'rifah means what? Everything connects to Allah, from Allah to Allah, by Allah. So until you reach that state, then you have to gradually, slowly learn to open up and find the right companionship. Why right companionship? Because the right companionship will make you understand that your wound is an opening to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The real is Allah. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, thank you, Sidi Khalid and Sister Ainun for the answer. We have two people who have raised up their hands. Shikin, could you unmute yourself and just share?
Salam Abu, how are you?
Alhamdulillah, good.
Hi, okay, I'll get the ball rolling. Okay, my question is like, so you all talk about nafs, and I guess, I mean, based on context, I guess choosing a partner and stuff for marriage, but I guess my question is also for like everything in life. How do you like not treat yourself? You know, like sometimes you want something so bad, and then you tell yourself, yeah, this is the right decision. You know, so how do you train yourself not to fall victim to that? You know, if you get what I'm asking. I mean, basically like how to train your nafs.
I think that is a good question because that is a journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually. Because the nafs always is the source of disobedience. Not always. It is the source of disobedience and it is something that will always lead you to bad or evil. By the way, I like your background, Teti Tarik, mashallah.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah. So I think it is important first and foremost, if you recognize or know or learn about your nafs, that's why you need to understand where are you going in your life and how does this nafs affect you from being closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And nafs is the problem in everything, in work, in family, in marriage, in friendship, right? Ego, nafs. So to be precise, to be direct to you, that's where we need to find a teacher also to learn how these nafs destroy our happiness, destroy our marriage, destroy our family, destroy everything that is good for us. Because we always focus on shaitan. We did not realize that the nafs is the closest to us as an enemy. So you have to find a teacher. That time, Dr. Mubarak, he shared that on the last day of Ramadan at South Ilahi Facebook Live. He said the need to find a teacher to learn about your nafs, to introspect about your nafs, and how you deal with it sincerely. That's the key. Because a lot of people, when they start to question like you, which is a good question, they try to find perfection in their. That's why when I said just now, in marriage, the danger is the nafs, the ego. So how does couple actually understand that their ego is a barrier between them and Allah in their marriage? Because it is not an outward way of seeing. It is an inward way of realizing. That's why marriage is an inward journey. Although you have to deal with it in outward way. You have to give nafkah to your family. Husband lah kan. You have to provide nafkah. You have to provide everything that is what is required in marriage. And then, like what my wife said, accommodation, whatever lah that deals with it. But the reality is you have to have that inward journey. That's why marriage is beyond fiqh. Fiqh is to guide you like halal, haram, man and woman kind of thing, what to do and what not to do. But the reality is the soul. You can be marrying someone who is poor, but if he is sincere, if he is always there to really take care of you physically, mentally, emotionally, you're happy. Even though you're poor. You can be rich. Your husband can earn 16,000. I met someone who earned 12,000 and end up in depression. So there's no key way, but as long as you are aware of your nafs, you had begin your journey. But how to go about is learn, practice, and have a spiritual guide. Again, have the right companionship. People who, when you are together, you learn about your nafs through them. That means they talk, they don't backbite people. That's not our way. But they learn the nafs so that they can improve themselves. You see, that's why one of the questions people always ask my Sheikh Mahi, when should we have a spiritual guide or when should we have a sheikh? And he answered, when you want to take care of your nafs seriously and sincerely. So Abu Sufyan way, your way, Salihah way, right, may be different of how you engage your nafs, but the core learning is the same from the awliya like Imam Ghazali, Imam Shafi'i, right, Syahmad Tijani, or whoever they are that are really guided by Allah to be spiritual guide from their books and from their inheritors. That means those who came through them until today. So there is no direct, I would say, solution to it. Okay, you do this, you will not get this. Ni bukan macam doctor who said you take 3 times a day, your fever will be gone. Right? But it's also like corona lah. Some people 14 days, some people 21 days, some people 3 months, 4 months. You don't know, right? That's metaphorical way of saying lah. You know, the journey belongs to Allah. You embark on it, you learn. All of us, until today, after 13 years of married, my wife, I'm still learning. I'm still learning about her. I'm still learning how to deal with her. And I'm still learning about how to be a better man, to be a better husband. And that's how you end up with Allah, because of your sincerity. And the nafs cannot take control of you as long as you are sincere. Just like shaitan, they cannot control you as long as you are sincere. Because you can learn so much knowledge, you can perform many ibadah, but if you're not sincere, that knowledge and ibadah, you can make use of it for the wrong purpose. Right? May Allah protect us. May Allah make us among those who are sincere. I hope I could answer your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
I mean, thank you, Sister Shikin, for the we had a brother who raised his hand just now. I think Brother Zul. Brother Zul, could you unmute yourself and ask the question?
Hi, Assalamualaikum. Sorry, actually,
Salam.
I accidentally pressed, but no, that's fine. So, Assalamualaikum, Brother Khalid and Sister Ainun. Thank you
Salam.
very much for the very informative session. So, I just want to add on about the emotional baggage. So, I think probably some of us, or if not all, have gone through, some kind of failed relationships. You have emotional baggage and stuff like that. So I think from my personal experience, to know if we have really moved on, in my opinion, that like Brother Khalid have already said, you yourself will know yourself. So I think try talking to someone, and if you feel that you no longer get angry or super upset, or right, seriously depressed, then you will know that you have already moved on. Like, for example, you can talk to your current partner, and you shared about your previous bad experiences, and you can just talk about it casually, and you will know that you have moved on. Yeah, that's just something that I want to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Zul. MashaAllah, beautiful. It is one of the way to understand that. Yeah, thank you.
Mashallah, thank you. Let's go to one of the questions sent in via WhatsApp. So, firstly, the person said, Salam, thank you so much to the presenters for doing this tonight. They're asking regarding to the point, talk about the basics of what you plan to do after marriage in terms of accommodation. Is it stated anywhere that it is less advisable for the wife to stay at the husband's home? That means with the in-laws. Because this person has both options. So they can either stay with her parents or the husband's parents. But she says that they have come to a reluctant conclusion to stay a few days at both places per week. And the person says that this is a logistical nightmare. But the husband does not feel so. So what are your thoughts on this?
Okay. Okay, this is something that you need to decide together, because you'll be the ones making this living arrangement. There is currently uh, no saying that we know of that you should stay with your parents, in-laws, or you stay by yourself. Um, this is mostly you have to consider culture as well. So there's no saying that where you should live. Okay, with regards to your arrangement, um I can understand that it is a difficult thing if you have that kind of living arrangement. Perhaps you can discuss further about what will make it easier on both sides. What can make it easier, make it like a longer period on each house, or something like that, something that is workable on both sides. Because I understand even in Singapore, you have to work as well, right? Maybe you have to commute, and I can understand how you have your things, your clothes that you have to bring around and all that. So it's something that you need to discuss, even because I do not know you also. So financially, whether there's another option. These are things that you need to discuss together. If it's something that worries you, that you think will really cause a problem, then you should be dealing with it now. At least you're open about it, and you establish that communication.
I think there's no straightforward to it lah. I think we both have it when we first started also. But then we decided, okay, what's the best? Both of us istihara. And then we decide where to go. All right. There are plus and minus point everywhere. So I hope you can advise your husband to just istihara lah. Istihara, what is the best option? And you both weigh it. It is part of the journey. Remember, intention, attention, destination. So all the things are meant for you to work it out accordingly to be closer to Allah. And to be closer to Allah, as I mentioned, it's not just solat, zikir, salawat. It is how you are happy even when you are in sadness or contentment or syukur, because you know that the test is from Allah and to Allah you shall return to Him.
Thank you. We have someone who has raised the hand. Iman, could you unmute yourself and please ask your question?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you to all of you. This was a very informative workshop. Jazakumullahu khairan. I had like a thought and then I had two follow-up questions. I think I'm just going to say it all in one go just to make it easier for everyone. The first thought is, as both of you were sort of discussing, the intention aspect and the first step aspect. What I thought of was that marriage is almost the ultimate exercise in humility, and leaving things, putting complete reliance on Allah, just doing what you need to do, taking the steps that you need to take, but then you have no control over the outcome. You have no control over the behavior of others, you have no control over, so you're just going into this almost not knowing what's happening on a day-to-day basis. So it's the ultimate test of reliance on Allah, but also the ultimate test of disciplining your soul, because this is another human being whose soul you're not aware of, whose inclinations and desires and thoughts of you're not aware of or familiar with. When you're struggling with your own self-control, how can you control someone else? So it is genuinely like a boot camp preparing you for like the ultimate relationship, which is the relationship with Allah. This is just a thought that sort of made me think, because this is what we forget. The ego is sort of making us always think that we're in control of things, but if we can't control ourselves, how can we control someone else that we get into this journey with? So that's just like and it's a good reminder, because it's one of those things that you never consider. You're always going into it thinking, okay, I need to do this and I need to do that, and I expect for these things to happen, and I want for these things to happen, and I deserve for these things to happen, not realizing that what you deserve is chosen by Allah for you. It's not a choice that you make for yourself. So Jazakumullah khairan. My question is, first of all, istikhara, because the sister mentioned that the first step is istikhara. So I was wondering, when you say istikhara, do you mean even before you've met the person, like when you just started the process, like you're just looking, do you pray istikhara then as well? Or is it when you've started conversation with a person, you pray istikhara, and then so I just wasn't aware when the istikhara process started. Is it from the get-go, as soon as you thought, okay, I'm interested in getting married and now I need to start doing things? So that's my first question. The second question is with regards to emotional baggage, but also just I would say things like bad habits or bad behaviors. I'm sure all of us have certain things that we struggle with. So how much do you divulge to the prospective spouse without scaring them off? Because obviously you want to be honest, but at the same time you don't want to be too honest that they end up running away. So it's just a question of what's the balance between honesty and self-preservation, if that makes sense. So yeah, Jazakumullah khair, and that's it for me.
Thank you, Sister Iman. I think what you said, your comment earlier made sense, and definitely we cannot control other people, and that's what one of our teachers always tell us. You can only control yourself. You can only change yourself. That's what I meant. Okay, with regards to the question of istikhara, actually, it's recommended by the scholars to pray istikhara. In fact, every day, daily, on every matter in your life. That means even for Allah to give you general guidance for the activities throughout your day. So actually istikhara is not only for certain situations where you're looking for guidance specifically, but also generally every day. So in that aspect, if you intend to get married, then I would recommend that you do it every day from the intention, even before you meet someone. So it's a good practice. It's only 2 raka'ah, so you can pray after Isha or even before Fajr, and you intend for Allah to show you towards the right person. So even before you meet anybody, you can already do the istikhara. Yeah, and with regards to the emotional baggage, or more specifically bad habits, right? I don't think, unless it's a really um, problematic bad habit, like really drastic, I don't think it's necessary to reveal that bad habit, unless you know that is something, let's say something that you definitely know is a big thing, like for example addiction is not only a habit, but it's also something that is quite serious and will affect the other person. Yeah, sometimes let's say like porn addiction or something like that, that is a big thing, because I think it's something that should be discussed before. But if it's something small, like maybe you like to watch Netflix all day, then I don't think that's something that you necessarily need to reveal to your prospective spouse.
I think it's important to manage our expectation. I mentioned just now during the intention, right? Manage expectation. But if I were to go on it, I think it become another 2 hours or 1 hour, because it's a big topic. But since you talk about it and my wife mentioning, I just said managing expectation is important. And how do you understand the person bad habits, like what my wife said, how far or how severe it is? If it's abusive or addiction to drugs, alcohol, or pornography, he can also be abusive mentally, spiritually. So I think the issue right now in this age, I always advise all people to learn social behavior so that we understand where we are going and we can learn and knowing who are we dealing with besides istihara, of course. Like, so because we need to be upfront, we need to be really upfront, like this is how I'm going to manage it and this is how I'm going to be doing it, right? Not after marriage then you realize like, hey, actually I shouldn't. No, that's not. It's supposed to be before. Understand his or her behavior, observe them, how they respond, how they react, whether it's appropriate or inappropriate. If it's inappropriate, you observe again how often it is. And that duration, you will be able to understand whether he can change or she can change or not. Yeah. You get what I mean? So just to add on from what my wife had shared. Thank you.
Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you.
Thank you, sister, and thank you, Sidi Khalid and Sister Ainun. Since we were on the topic of istikhara, based on that, someone's asking, what is a good sign of istikhara? Is there any, sign that, okay, means yes or this means no, or what is a good sign?
I think this is a very popular question. Every now and then we will get, even at South Ilahi, when I hosted a share, they always ask this question, what is the sign that it is good for true istihara? I think my share answered before Sheikh Mahi during one of the talk in Singapore in 2019, a year before the pandemic. And he said that the greatest mistake that people will do, and I use the word greatest. Why? Because people really focus on it, zoom on it, is dreams. They always go for dreams. And my Sheikh said, not necessarily dreams, right? My opinion, this is my opinion, my experience, is that when you istihara, Allah make it easy for it to happen. Regardless, the situation is not possible. Like Imam Ghazali said lah, if it's meant for you, it's meant for you. Even if it's across the ocean. If it's not meant for you, it will not be for you, even if you are sitting beside the person. So all this is beyond us to understand. But always look into your heart and how you feel about it. And if it's getting difficult, then perhaps it's not the sign. Or things that unearth, that means unveil. You don't know. Suddenly you open up this person, or the mother don't like you suddenly, or the person show his another character, or the person whatever lah that deals with him or his surrounding or his environment or the people around unearth. Especially not the so good, but you see it for yourself. It could be that, yeah. So there's no direct answer in saying this is good or bad, right? So, but that is the sign, because when it comes to spiritual, because this is spiritual, you're asking Allah what's the best for you, right? But if your heart already wants that person, then it's too bad lah, because emotionally you're still attached. But there's always but lah, a lot of but. That when you istihara and then suddenly you like what I say, like you saw all this unearth, you unexpected, that's a sign, right? So it is, I cannot say like everything is so direct, then tomorrow you look for it, then you say, alamak, Khalid say like this, but never happen pun, tak jadi pun, what's going on? So it's never ever direct. It's all your heart. This is gaib, like my wife said just now, gaib. Something that is unseen. You cannot see. You trust in Allah.
Thank you. We have a person who has raised the hand, Baria. Could you unmute yourself?
Hello, Assalamualaikum. My question would be, like Sister Ainun said, that we need to recognize our deal breakers. So if somebody's deal breaker is that the other person should be into religion, like they should be practicing, how do we know the deen of a person? Can it be known only by talking to them, or is it important to know and to look for the visible sunnah, like the bed, etc.? Thank you.
I think it's difficult to actually base, because when you're saying about practicing, right, I would think that it's more towards maybe their prayer and the basics, the fasting, zakat, all that, and these are things maybe you do not see. So it's important probably for you to actually look for the signs. Maybe in today's context, if maybe while when you actually communicate with each other, you can actually ask him directly as well, but you will not know whether it's true or not, of course. But you can also look for signs, like okay, how does he behave, because even for prayer, right, there's certain timing. So does he take care of his time, and what is he doing at this particular time? And that will probably give you an example, give you a sign of whether he does practice or not. But I think beyond that, we cannot, I think most of us, in fact all of us, are looking for spouse who are good people, not just practicing but have good character. And because this, if you look at this, if you are looking for someone who's good, who has good character, who's practicing, then this is something that you cannot see. It is gaib. That is the importance of istikhara, actually, because Allah knows this, you do not know. You yourself, you are asking the question because you do not know. There are steps, maybe you can ask their sister or their friends, and it is allowed. I mean, in Islam, right, if somebody asks you, what do you think of this person, I want to get married to him. So if you know that that person has a bad trait, you are actually allowed to say what it is, because it's important. When you want to know a person before marriage, you have, that means you cannot hide a person's maybe something bad habits, when a person asks specifically about marriage, because you have a responsibility to tell the person the exact truth. So you can also ask friends, for example. But what I'm saying is that if you have asked and you cannot know for sure, then that is where your istihara comes in, and you ask Allah for guidance, because these are actually things that you cannot really see. And when you ask for istikhara, no matter what happens, you know that Allah is giving you what's best for you, and that's important.
Thank you. We have a question someone sent over, and the question goes: if the man and woman is ready to get married and they want to get married in a specific time and to have a simple nikah, but one side has parents who are okay with the small nikah, but the other side has parents who want to have a bigger nikah and a bigger ceremony without taking into consideration the COVID-19. So do you have any advice or tips to help persuade the parents to rethink and accept the small nikah or come to a better compromise, since the stereotype of majority of parents is to have a big wedding ceremony to invite more people and in a way, according to the author's words, to show off?
Okay, I can understand this struggle because I think a lot of young people actually have this struggle. And with COVID-19, actually some of them were very happy because the restriction comes from the government. So, the families have no choice but to accept. Um, but now that the restrictions have been lifted and things like that, it is difficult, and I know it can be frustrating, but this is just a glimpse into what marriage is like in the future. So you will be having to deal with issues with the other side of the families, many issues, because you are looking at two families that are getting together, and they all have different views about what they want, and that is where you need to learn, to the best that you can, how to handle these issues when the conflict arises. And my suggestion to you is, of course, to speak to your partner first to get her on board. Then perhaps that will help to to convince the other party, whoever it is. Yeah, and it helps to have somebody on your side who can also try to persuade towards what you actually want to achieve.
Okay, just give me. I also felt that the importance of istihara on this matter, right? But like what my wife said, you both of you have to stand together to say that we want this together. And having said that, perhaps istihara is also important to see what is the outcome, what is the guidance from Allah on this, and then you maneuver the plan. Right? Always work on things together so that you're on the same page, you're on the same path, and then you can decide, okay, let's istihara, how we can get to this point. That means, how can we resolve this matter from Allah? And Allah will guide you, and Allah will show you, right? So there are things that is beyond us. My wife has said you can get someone to talk to the parents who have a different idea, who wanted bigger majlis, right? So someone who can really wise and able to talk, yeah, that's one thing good. And also istihara. Ask Allah how to go about this. How do we deal with this? And how do we come out from this? Yeah. So you say that this marriage is for you, Ya Allah. Guide us to 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 be married and how to do it from your guidance. Yeah.
Thank you. We have one last question here that's sent to the WhatsApp. Could a deal breaker be if he is someone who is slightly a misogynist? Can such things be re-educated, or should we just leave it as it is and walk away?
Um. Okay, I do not know the person, so this is kind of unfair to say. Um. Because I do not know how far is the misogynist view and all that, but this is something that you need to pick out yourself, because I do not know the details. So but misogynist view itself is not something that uh, can change very easily. It's something that is usually picked up for a long time, something like a habit. So it's been years and years, and you have this view. So is it easy to change that view? If you have, for example, you have a certain habit you have for many years, is it easy to change? It's not. So misogynist views are usually deep rooted, maybe even since childhood. So to unpack that requires usually requires a lot of reflecting, a lot of accepting, wanting to change and wanting to relearn. And are these things that you see in that person? And of course, whether it's a deal breaker for you or not. For some, they can still take it if there's some misogynistic view in their prospective partner. So it's not a deal breaker for some. But if it is for you, then it is something that you need to consider. To relearn is not easy, usually.
As a man, I would say that it's difficult also because I do not know the person like what my wife said. But it is important for you not to ignore all this. These are the critical signs towards your marriage and in your marriage. Most often, this is the sad part, that many women often think that it is okay and normal if the husband were to be misogyny or watch porn. This is absolutely abnormal. And I'm serious about it because it destroys your family and your children. How deep is his misogyny? You have to find out, like what my wife said. But I'm just speaking as a man, saying that it is abnormal. It is wrong, right? I don't hear that from my late father. If even for myself, right? When I was rude to my mother, my father will come up to me and said, "This is wrong," and he raised up his eyes, open up his eyes and all that. And there was, I'm not ashamed to share this. There was one time I had two sisters. I had three sisters actually. One passed away when we were young. May Allah bless her. So one of my sister, I had a quarrel with her. I quarrel and it becomes intense, and then I call her Babi. Babi, Babi, not babe, Babi, and pig lah in English, right? Pork. And my father came to me and he gave me one tight slap, and he said, "Don't be rude to your sister. This is your sister. Have some manners, have some respect." And because of that, until today, I still remember that. My chin until today, I feel that. But because of my father teaching in respecting women, even though he was not a perfect man, I have to admit that. But it is also the way how he educated me and taught me. I felt that after so many years, I'm 44 years old, right? I saw you cannot take chances with all this. Because a lot of time they say that it is normal for men to say this, it is normal for men to watch porn, it is normal for men to do certain stupid things or lewd jokes. It's not. No, it's not. Period. But whether he tauba or he changed, you need to monitor. Again, monitor. Again, observant. When I say monitor means observe how he really change or he doesn't change. And if he change, it's difficult based on his level of whatever that you go through. Like what my wife said, what is the core of it? Is it pornography? Or was it he was abused before when he was childhood? Or a woman hurt him that he hate woman? Or, this kind of thing. We cannot generalize, of course, but you have to monitor that. Because it is not a straightforward answer. He may change, I don't know, but he may not change, you don't know. Right? So to say I'm sorry or I cannot, then I felt that you had to send him to rehab or.
Just to add on, because misogynistic is very vast, and I'm just afraid that it can also mean abuse as well. So I just want to add that it's important to understand, is it like he wants to control you, he think that all women needs to be controlled? That is a very big red flag, because if that's the view, then it looks more towards abuse than just simple misogynistic view. So these are things that you need to pick up, and I just remember that it's a big concern now. So what is it, what you need uh to figure out exactly? Is it just like he likes to make jokes about women, but he doesn't have anything against them. He just thinks it's funny. You know, for like for example, recently the case, and some people actually apologize. They say, okay, I make a joke that is not appropriate. So he has already apologized and he accept that it's wrong. So that's a sign that, okay, this is something that they want to work on it. But if it goes as far as, okay, I want to control, I think women should be controlled in a certain way, then that's a red flag, a big red flag for abuse, because that's one of the ways in which men usually display abusive behavior.
Right, thank you. That was the last of the questions. We've come to the end of the program. Alhamdulillah. Thank you, Sidi Khalid and Sister Ainun, and all your questions during our open discussion. A little bit about what's coming up. Since the last question was about misogynistic views, by extension, we have another program tomorrow, guys, and that's happening Sunday, 6th of June, 9 p.m. Singapore time, 9 p.m. Let's talk about sexual harassment. We have our directors, Ustaz Sheikh Farouk, Sis Shazana, and also Sis Shikin will be joining us, inshallah. That's coming up tomorrow at 9 p.m. Singapore time. Let's talk about sexual harassment on Facebook Live. So do tune in. The next announcement is for the upcoming Korban efforts that we are doing in Senegal, West Africa. So the opportunity is already open. You can get a portion of a cow. You can get the whole cow with 7 names, or you can get a goat or a sheep. Closing date is 10th of July. WhatsApp 96704471. Don't worry if you've missed the poster. Just go to our Facebook. You'll see the poster there, and also our Instagram. And next up, we also have our the Knowing God 20 Attributes of Allah class by Ustaz Bediu Zaman is held online via Zoom. This is 9 Fridays. 9 consecutive Fridays, 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Of course, Singapore time, starting 2nd of July. There's an early bird and a normal price. And the next one is our Build a Hospital project in Senegal. Do we have a poster for that? But if you are interested, go to bit.ly/Senegal Hospital 21 to find out more. Inshallah, is to raise funds to build maternity ward, pediatric clinics, and a lot of efforts to help the community in Taibanias, West Africa. And we hope that everything is okay. Do forgive us for any shortcoming. Yes, someone just pasted the link here. If you want to find out more about the hospital, go to the chat box and you can check it out. And with that, thank you so much for joining. Please pray for our directors. Please pray for our volunteers. And we hope that you have benefited in some way during this event. Do share our events. And with that, thank you so much for joining. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Thank you and have a good evening over here in Singapore.